Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. We'll give everyone a few minutes or a few seconds to join here so that we can get started with our webinar today. Okay. Hi, my name is Pamela Benke, Director of Product Marketing at Knowledge Lake. And welcome to part 2 of our transformative webinar series featuring Dr. Leslie Willcocks and Dr. John Hindle, the esteemed authors of Maximizing Value with Automation and Digital Transformation, a Realist Guide. Today, we delve deeper into the transformative capabilities of AI-powered automation platforms with a focus on both optimizing expenditures and amplifying value. Before we begin, a few housekeeping items. This webinar will be recorded and available for later viewing on demand. Also, we encourage your participation. So please, join in. There's going to be a Q&A session. Type in your questions, and there will be a poll during the presentation. And now, to get us started, is Knowledge Lake's Bart Peluso, our VP of Marketing. Bart?
Thanks so much, Pam. I am super excited to be here to talk with you about increasing the value of automation. You know, discussion of automation goes back to 1794 when Eli Whitney invented the cotton gin. There were some that said automation could negatively impact the workflow and jobs, and others that supported it, and we saw what became of that. It remains a topic 230 years later. Just yesterday, Bill Gates had an amazing blog on his Gates Notes talking about the power of synthetic labor and the future of it. We believe in AI-powered synthetic labor. Looking at it, we know work has always been done by humans, but new technologies, and there's never been a precedent like there is now with generative AI, new technologies fueling AI has allowed office work to be done by software more intelligently than it has ever been done. Synthetic labor today is enabling organizations to drastically improve productivity. And as that technology accelerates, more of the mundane work continues to shift to synthetic or digital labor. And it's the early adopters of this, those that know how to apply it to value, which we'll be talking about today, that are realizing a competitive advantage. Now is the time. The future is now. We see this state as 4 key components. We see that we have people doing the work alongside technology, the actual process that threads through, and synthetic labor. This brings about improved quality, consistency, reliability, along with reduced costs, reduce risk, and reduce uncertainty. If you look at the aggregate of that, that is the work produced output. That's the increase in productivity. Now, what is really critical is finding the right balance. And this is particularly why we've built out this webinar series, right? Because there's adoption of automation and has been for some time, but there's a bit of a lack in driving value and moving through the steps to realize the value of automation. Let's face it, certain tasks are best for humans, certain mundane tasks are best for synthetic labor. How do you find that right balance? A few requirements that we'll be going over today is enabling digital labor across your organization, encouraging it to up-level the human productivity component. and integrating the automation platform so they're not in silos, but pulled together seamlessly. Ease of use is very, very important. The ability for everyone to step up as easily as they use an iPhone or a smartphone, and then the workflow understanding and the ability where people can look at, from their perspective, from the role of their perspective, what needs to be accomplished from the beginning of the workflow through the very end, and build out that workflow and best use AI and automation to increase productivity within their organization. Once again, we're super proud to have Dr. John Hindle, who is Associate Professor at Vanderbilt, and Dr. Leslie Willcocks, who is Professor and is the Professor at London School of Economics. Together, they're best-selling authors on automation. They have some great books. We'll touch base on that a little earlier, but for now, speaking on total platform value framework, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. John Hindle. John?
Thank you, Bart, and welcome to all of our attendees. Leslie and I are partners in a firm called Knowledge Capital Partners, and we've, over the past, I think, 3 decades, Leslie, been studying multiple waves of technology-based adoption, literally thousands of case studies, beginning, I think, with IT outsourcing and business process outsourcing and shared services, leading on to the internet adoption and cloud and RPA, into cognitive and intelligent automation, and we're on the verge now of incorporating artificial intelligence and understanding how enterprises have experienced these new technologies as they've been arrived, and how they have used them to capture values. Our research, however, shows that adoption patterns for new technologies repeat themselves with each new wave as users gain experience and seek to capture the maximum value. And out of that research, we've developed what we call the 3 E's model for assessing total platform value. And the 3 E's, as shown on this slide, begin with efficiency, but they move onwards to effectiveness and enablement as value capture increases. So companies invariably start by looking for greater efficiency in their operations, with a primary focus on cost savings, doing the same thing faster, better, and cheaper than they had been doing it. And they evaluate these potential technologies that can help them do that on the basis of return on investment, how it can help them reduce or cap their headcount and streamline their operations, measured against the cost of acquiring the technology itself. What is the return we can capture financially against the investment we would make? But as they gain experience, many clients we've watched seek additional gains in what we call organizational effectiveness and enablement on the right-hand side of this slide. And we'll come to those in a moment. But if we can move to slide 7, the first step on managing costs is to understand the total cost of ownership of the technology, not just the acquisition and licensing costs of the technology itself, which is what companies use to determine ROI, or return on investment. Total cost of ownership includes also ongoing operation and maintenance costs, as well as the project management costs and the potential replacements and upgrades that will ensue. Understanding total cost of ownership, or TCO, helps companies streamline and manage their recurring costs and improve their sourcing capabilities. And TCO is important because it establishes a baseline for capturing much greater value, demonstrating what we call the multiplier effect, where the return from a given expenditure is multiples greater than the expenditure itself. And these activities that you see here in revisiting your purchasing systems and streamlining your project costs are important components of this. Can we have next slide? So by establishing their total cost of ownership, our research shows that companies are better positioned to capture even more value from their technology investments. Efficiency, as I said, is the first layer of value. It's focused mainly on reducing or avoiding costs, and it typically yields twice the total cost of the TCO investment required in terms of the value it delivers. So you don't just get you amortize your cost of investment, you actually get double the value by looking at it from a total cost of ownership perspective. Effectiveness, which is the next layer of value in our research, which is focused on using analytics to streamline and reconfigure business processes, not just to do the same thing, but to do it differently. This layer of value typically yields about a 5x value gain based on our research. So double your value gain and capture with efficiency, you can get 5 times more in the research that we've done on clients who have adopted technology to create and streamline and reconfigure their business processes. But the real exponential value or hidden value comes from what we call an enablement agenda, creating what is in effect a technology options platform for the business, using analytics for innovation to transform the business model, to develop new products and services, and to accelerate value for customers. And this layer of value typically reaches a 10-fold increase in the initial investment in the technology and its deployment in our research. Next slide. And this slide brings together the value journey we've just outlined, creating what we call total platform value, how leading organizations travel the transformation journey through efficiency onto effectiveness and finally into enablement. And you can see here the steps and the actions that capture this additional value at each stage. But it's important to remember that multiplier effect, because it's not satisfactory enough just to recover your investment, but it's how you use that investment to create and capture even more value in effectiveness and enablement. Next slide. So this slide brings together the value journey, and I'm going to turn over the mic to my colleague Leslie Willcocks at this point, and he's going to identify some specific actions you can consider as you make and begin your value journey. Leslie?
Thank you very much, John, and hello everyone from, actually I'm in Cornwall in England. Yeah, there are 2 things I'd say about what John's just said. The first one is, the 2 things we've noticed is that if you understate costs, and most people do grossly understate their costs of automation and digital transformation, it allows you the opportunity to understate the benefits that you are seeking. Now, politically, that's quite a good gain to have, because it means you don't have to work that hard to find the benefits. But you create an unreal world. You live in an unreal world where all your costs are out from where they really are, and you're going to have some unpleasant surprises there. But secondly, you only look for very limited benefits, when in fact, as John has indicated, there are so many more benefits than most people seek. So there's that aspect to it. The other thing, why we like total cost of ownership on the cost side, is because, frankly, if you can't identify your costs, there's no way you can control them. So we dig deep into the nature of what we would call hidden costs. Simply, they're hidden because people are not really looking for them. So John mentioned operation and maintenance costs, for example. We regularly found that for every dollar you spend buying a piece of technology, you spend another 40 cents per annum on operations and maintenance. Do you factor that into the life cycle costs of your technology? Probably not. And as a result, you look for more limited benefits that are going to pay off from these technology investments. So what I want to look at very quickly in the time available is three ways that you can really reduce costs and go for more value. Three very practical ways, relatively simple ways of analyzing where you are and how you're going to move on. And the first one is have a look at your existing systems and technology portfolio. And that gives you the opportunity to make some very important decisions. Now, I call this the $3 million slide because my experience when we first used it, we wondered how we were running an executive program for an insurance company, a major insurance company, and we used to supply a very nice lunch, and we thought, how are we going to keep them entertained after lunch? And my colleague, David Feeney, came up with this thing, and he said, well, let's get them to look at their existing technology and get them to categorize them and see the sorts of decisions they would make in terms of whether they should continue with these technologies or whether they should not. And it was the most intriguing hour and a half. We sent them away and said, where is your technology? Where are your systems? Are they high in business value or low in business value? And are they high in technical quality or are they low in technical quality? Go away, talk through, plot it on this map, and let's see what you've got. And we found actually there were technologies and systems in all these boxes. So what do we do? And when you find there's a lot of technologies and systems in the high business value, high technical quality area. Well, there's no cost savings to be had there. You basically are going to invest in that area, aren't you? So, but it's a wise investment because they're paying off. Very good. Then you look at the ones that are high in business value but low in technical quality. So what you do there? Well, you need these systems, but invariably, if you look at that, you're going to need to invest in them to improve their technical quality. But in doing so, you will also find that you've got very high maintenance costs to keep these things afloat. So you do actually reduce those costs, those maintenance costs. Now, maintenance cost sounds sort of a small thing, but in some organizations, it's 40 to 50% of the IT budget, the automation and IT budget. So it's not a small figure. So you could be saving money in that box. The third area, really quite interesting, is very good technical quality, but no business value or very low business value. How do you get systems and technologies there? Well, they're either failed attempts to compete. They were big bets that didn't come off, or they might just be distractions, what we call digital glamourware or digital handbags, we've got AI. We're first into AI. What do you do with it? Well, and nothing as yet. But we'll find something to do at some stage. Well, it's not the best way of getting into very expensive technology that might mess up your organization, by the way. So you've got to either drop those or repurpose them, find another place for them. So far, where does the $3 billion come from that you're going to save? Well, you might have made some savings already. The big issue is, what decision do you make on systems, technologies that are low in technical quality and low business value? And now we find historically that this is the biggest, most difficult decision organizations have to make. They hate making the drop decision because people own the systems that exist. They always can make a reasonable case for keeping them. They are useful. Even a child of 6 can make a very convincing case for more technology or holding on to the technology They have. I know that's true because I saw figures the other day that said 40% of 4 to 6-year-olds in the UK actually have mobile phones. So they must have argued for them because how else did they get them? So this area is invariably populated when managers think about it. Low technical quality, low business value. The most difficult thing to do is to persuade them to drop those technologies completely, drop them. They will have no real business impact upon you. They won't disturb all the vital business metrics. And you'll save, in this case, we estimated $5 million. Now, how do we get to $3 million? Well, because they didn't have the guts to get rid of $2 million worth, or there was a very strong political arguments for them to avoid the $2 million. So, and $3 million was enough, and which wasn't bad 1.5 hours work, I thought, by 10 senior executives. Anyway, just an idea there for you to work at to save yourself a lot of money and, in fact, repurpose quite a lot of technology investments. The second one of the three is a return to good old re-engineering. It never is out of fashion, in fact. It was highly fashionable in the 1990s, where it got quite a bad name for the idea that 65% of radical re-engineering projects failed. But actually, re-engineering shouldn't be a massive whole organization major project. It should be done on an ongoing basis with all your processes, all your key processes. And the point that we're going to make here and demonstrate on the next slide is that if you add automation, digital technologies, AI to an existing business process, an existing business model, all you're going to get is a faster version of what you've got already. And if that was a poor business process or a poor business model, all you're really going to get is disaster faster. A magnifying effect, an amplifier effect of the technology is to make a very good management much better and a bad management much, much worse. So let's have a look at what you do. Well, this is data from our own database, 1,000 plus case study database. And what it shows is that if you automate something, you will be disappointed to learn that you will probably get an efficiency increase of only between 10 to 30%. That's been empirically validated in our database. If you don't automate, but you just re-engineer, focus on re-engineering, you'll probably get 30 to 200% more value out of that process. If you combine the two, both re-engineering followed by automation, you get what might be called transformation. You get 5 to 10 times the business value from what you were getting if you didn't do anything. Now, I mean, that looks fairly dramatic. All I can say is that it has been empirically validated that this is the way to go if you really want to reduce your costs and you want to point your technology in the right direction. You have to do the re-engineering to get the exponential results from the technology. The third area where you can take action is in the area of silos. Your organizations are very siloed. You might not think so because you're used to them running as they do because they've been relatively streamlined, but they're streamlined in silos. So even a functional organization is highly siloed. If you silo something in HR, procurement, finance, operations, technology, if you silo in that way, you might operate extremely efficiently within those silos. but you might be doing an awful lot of things that you could be doing much better if you're doing them across the silos. Digital technologies don't like silos. They like doing things across traditional boundaries. They like breaking down those boundaries. So in order to adopt digital technologies and automation, you have to break down those silos. So one way of thinking about that is, and we're going to ask you to do a little poll now. One way of looking at that is to say, well, where is the biggest silo that you experience in your organization that might be stopping you from actually automating or introducing digital technologies? Is it that you haven't got a very good strategy and the management in place to do that digital activity? Is it the actual technology and the data? There's too much of a legacy there. The data is not well organized. The technology doesn't fit very well with automation and digital technologies. Is it your organizational culture? Is it just not up to speed with using these technologies? Is it, as I said earlier, is it about you needing to re-engineer both the process and also your organizational structure? Are they operating in ways that are real barriers to your digital transformation? Or is it the one that most people fall back on, thinking that it is the problem, is do you have the skills to actually implement these digital technologies, or is your skill base set up for a different business model altogether? It could be any of these, it could be all of these. We do have organizations with a relatively high level of all of these, which explains why they are greatly inhibited in their digital transformation activities. What we're going to ask you now, and Pamela will help us here, is we're going to ask you to vote for one of these as your biggest problem and see where I'm going to make a guess as to what one's going to come out. And I've written it down on my piece of paper here.
Yeah, and
But
for our viewers, if you look at your screen below the presentation slide, you should see a tab that says poll. Please go ahead and pick your answer, and we will close this poll here in a couple of seconds. And
so
we'll see if Leslie's guess is correct. All right, I'm going to end the poll. And Leslie, do you see the response?
no, is it?
Okay, I will tell you that it looks like it's about culture is almost 100%.
I wrote it down. Yes, I could write it down because I knew. Because
actually, and apologies, technology and data has come in second.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Culture eats everything else for breakfast. Actually, it has a very big breakfast culture. It was an easy one to do because that's what we find all the time. We do this regularly. Do this highly detailed digital transformation analysis with companies, and that's where organizations have the most problems. I mean, we can talk about culture in the Q&A if you want, and what culture you should be shooting for. But interestingly, the connected thing with that is the thing that organizations are weakest at, apart from the measurement area, which John was outlining, is change management. And the reason change management is so difficult is because you start with the wrong culture. So it all fits together quite neatly. And this goes back to one of our major statements, Pamela and Bart, which you know, which is 25% of your problems are the technology, 75% are management and organization. And that relates back to structure, process, strategy, management, mindsets, and culture. Okay, so just to make sure that you believe everything we've just said, this is the database, the research database, and it's all been written down in 5 books so far. I will be working on the 6th one quite soon. And the latest one is Maximizing Value with Automation and Digital Transformation, which it distills, I think, hopefully in a very accessible way, the findings from all our research.
Wonderful. Thank you both. We really appreciate this informative webinar, and we want to open it up to the audience and share with you that if you want to get started on this journey, Knowledge Lake is offering 5 spots free of charge for a proof of concept. And in order to sign up for that, you can email me at pamela.banky@knowledgelake.com, or in the attachment section, there is a link, a URL to a form that you can quickly fill out, and you'll be in consideration for a free proof of concept. In addition, the first 5 to sign up will also receive a copy of Maximizing Value with Automation and Digital Transformation, a Realist guide. You don't want to miss that. It's really helpful. And at this point, I think we will turn it over to some Q&A. Let me take a look here, make sure that everyone is unmuted and ready to answer some questions from the audience. Let's see. So we've got a couple of questions rolling in here. First one is, what if an organization has an automation strategy already, but not the culture? So this goes back to the poll that we just did. What steps can be taken to align the culture with the strategy? Who would like to take a stab at that?
I'm quite happy to. I think the first thing you need to establish is that there is a business imperative for the technology that the technology delivers on. And so, there is technology is valueless unless you have a business problem or a business purpose that it can deliver on. So this triggers the right culture. People will not buy into the technology if they don't see the point. If they're not hurting somewhere, or they haven't got something that they can drive towards that's a business imperative, they will not change the culture. They will not buy into the technology. That's the vital trigger point in all this. So, if the technology's being waved around, but you can't see the point of it, why would you rationally buy into this technology? You've got nothing to gain from it in any way. You then need to spend an awful lot of time and effort on getting the culture in place. The problem has been that people see it as an afterthought. We'll get the technology in, and then people will fall in line because it will automatically be obvious that it's to their advantage, that we're investing in the organization, that it hits a certain business imperative. It doesn't necessarily. You have to communicate all that very strongly over a long period of time. You have to invest in people who are dedicated to changing the culture. And one of the interesting questions about culture that you need to ask is, what kind of culture do you want around here? What kind of culture will you buy into? I mean, Knowledge Lake has a very nice culture, and you all like working for it, and you recognize that the rules of the game are useful. They support business activity that makes sense to you. So you have sessions where you ask people, what kind of culture do you want here that supports the sorts of things you should be doing? And then you flush out what the culture is, where the pain points are, where the culture is not matching what the culture should be. People then buy into a different kind of culture that they're willing to support. Now, the problem is that there is there are two aspects to culture. One is you should not be throwing away your business culture in the sense that there is an organizational culture that supports what the organization does. I remember when I used to work with some retail companies, supermarkets, they had this culture which was retail is detail. That was the culture. You don't throw that away when you go digital. You add to the culture. You make the make your digital culture consistent with the organizational culture. So you say, well, if retail is detail, how does technology help us do retail is detail? And so the sort of digital culture that you marry with your organizational culture, we know what it looks like. We know that it looks for impact. It looks for radical use of technology that's going to innovate to give you business impact. It looks for speed of operations. It looks for moving fast. It looks for openness, sharing of information, sharing of ideas. It looks for people being able to be acting in discretionary ways, autonomous ways, beyond obvious uh, rules, etc. I mean, one of the interesting areas there, just as one example, is call centers. I mean, call centers can use digital technologies extremely well, but if people are bound by a script, which makes them very rigid in their responses to people's problems, then the technology is not going to help an awful lot, and the empathy is going to go out of the relationship between you and the customer as a call center operator, and so um, the lack of discretion is works against you. The technology being employed in ways that is not allowing the individual to utilize the strengths that they have relative to the customer. That's just one example of why autonomy is necessary. And the last point is that the culture should be digital first. When you have a business technology, business imperative, a business problem, you say, well, how can the technology help us? I mean, AI is worthless. I mean, I listen to all this rhetoric about AI, and I say, well, what are you going to use it for? Just tell me, and I'll buy into it. But at the moment, uh, it's worthless until you've got a problem that it's going to solve, and it can solve a lot of problems, but each one will be different in different organizations. So I hope I've given you an overlong answer, but nevertheless a good one on changing culture.
I would add, changing culture is in many ways exhibiting the culture directly to the audience that you wish to adopt it. So I call it build and be the model. So the larger organization needs to see at a leadership level the adoption of the behaviors that you wish to change or that you wish them to emulate. And it's simply a change management exercise, whether it's related to technology or not. You have to give people a model to emulate, and that demonstrates the visible reward both personally and for the enterprise as a whole.
Great. Just a reminder to the audience, please continue to put your questions in the question window. We have another one come in. What future trends do you foresee in the evolution of AI-powered automation platforms, and how should companies prepare to stay ahead?
I'm going to hand over to John for this one, because John said earlier, that we saw organizations go through very similar adoption curves. And that's correct, isn't it, John? What we expect with AI is what we've seen before in terms of adoption curves.
Yeah, and I think that, again, that goes back to build and be the model as a maxim. Over the 25 or 30 years that we've been looking at this stuff, it's amazing that every time a new technology comes along, organizations make the same mistakes in terms of adopting it. So it's worth, if you're going to undertake the journey, it's worth spending some time in reflection to understand how your own organization and others like yours have succeeded or been limited by behavioral factors, and then trying to work around those issues, because it's the behaviors more than the technology itself that's going to, changing behaviors is going to give you the real value. And it's really remarkable that there is a certain large segment which will be perfectly satisfied with efficiency, but they will also be outpaced by organizations that seek greater value through effectiveness and enablement, and use technology as a platform for change and development. Leslie, I'm trying to remember what I think something between 30 and 40% are quite happy just to get the efficiency gain and stop there. But I think there's a smaller percentage, maybe down to 25 or 30%, that go for effectiveness, which is to make the organization work more totally as an organization more effectively. And there's probably about 20%, that last 15 to 20%, that really see it as a platform for transformation in the organization. And that distribution we have seen, again, across wave after wave after wave of technology. The problem for many organizations is you can't, if you're stuck in the efficiency lane, you're going to get outpaced pretty quickly over time in the next couple of technology waves.
Well, it's a bit like, don't like weaponry examples normally, but if you say we've all got machine guns, but we're going to use them as muskets, we're going to line up, like the British used to, line up with muskets, and we're going to fire one volley, and then we're going to reload, and then we're going to fire another volley, and we have machine guns in our hands. I mean, you're not doing the technology the disservice that it can do you. It's just mind-blowingly not very good idea.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to be done there. We just find that people start treating the machine guns as muskets, very early on, and then gradually they realize what they've got in their hands, and we try to drag them forward by accelerating their learning, by writing books and showing the total platform value idea, to say you should be more ambitious with these technologies, and people still aren't, but they seem to be buried in this old measurement regimes, efficiency obsessions, and the notion that if there's going to be learning to be done, I have to do it the hard way.
I think it's also about being satisfied with efficiency and not expecting or reaching for something more, because every one of these technology waves has potential to actually be transformational, but a lot of companies stop at a certain level and say, well, we've been there, done that, and it's time for the next one. And they really haven't seized the full value or applied the full value of the one that they have just done. So,
great. I think we've got one more question here at the moment. And the question is, what are some examples of hidden costs in digital transformation initiatives, and how can we effectively uncover and manage them?
Let me start with that one. I think we found when we were started looking in 2015 to 2017, we looked at robotic process automation in that period of time and wrote about 3 books on that, and came out at the end of that one, the 3rd book, which was about the risks that you will materialize. And one of the risks was hidden costs. Because robotic process automation was sold as a sort of low cost, no expertise kind of technology that the business could adopt and bypass the technology department. But unfortunately, the hidden costs are like as the follows. The first one is if the technology vendor hasn't built a tool that is enterprise friendly, that it can fit with other technologies, can fit with the major enterprise systems, you will incur massive maintenance costs and lots of delays, and you will be hiring subcontractors to try to fit your technology, your automation with other technologies, and you'll have a very long trail of maintenance costs. Secondly, we found that a lot of these technology vendors said they had lots of partners who had other technologies that fitted with these technologies. And we found that was only partly true in a number of cases. So you've got to be very careful how good those relationships were with their partners. What we found was that very often the client was sort of they bought the automation from one technology vendor, and then they were passed on to the partner, and they had to have another relationship and another way of sewing together all the kit. And that was hidden costs with the vengeance. So someone like Knowledge Lake sort of sorted this out back 2019, I think, by integrating a lot of these technologies and making them work together. And so when you dealt with those kinds of vendors, you sort of had a seamless experience, and a lot of those hidden costs went away. So that was one major area for the automation areas. The same was true with digital technologies, with business analytics, trying to fit those with all sorts of trying to do it on the cloud, trying to fit it with all these other technologies. We typically talk about 10 technologies, don't we? That are digital technologies that people are trying to sew together. Sewing them together is quite a set of hidden costs, I promise you.
Great. I think that's all we have as far as questions. Just any other parting words while we have come to the end of the webinar?
I would say don't aim too low in what you think you can. And that's a common thing. People are happy when they get the efficiency gain. They've demonstrated that they've captured some value, and then it's on to the next whatever, without actually fully understanding what's left on the table.
And I think mine would be don't believe the rhetoric of high value, because from the technology alone, don't believe the value of high value from the technology alone. AI is going to be a prime example of that, because these things are sold at the front end as silver bullets. On January, about a year and a half ago now, isn't it? On 1 January, we were told that the world is going to change, that every spot in the planet was going to change because of AI. And in January this year, I read a survey by Boston Consulting, I think, that said that 90% of businesses have AI as a watching brief, which meant that they were doing nothing serious. There was a couple of them were dabbling, but I was doing nothing or nothing serious on AI in a year later after it was announced that AI would change everything. Now these are much slower burn technologies than you would ever think. They take from 6 to 26 years to be adopted wholesale in an economic sector. Where 90% or more of the technology of the organizations are utilizing them as an everyday technology and maximizing the potential from them. It's not the technology, it's the management in the organization that explains the speed with which you get the take up, the speed with which you get the value, and it's they who realize then you can apply the thing that John said, don't then aim too low, aim very high. Once you've got the organization sorted, the management sorted, and you're applying the technology in the right way.
And, yeah, in thinking about AI, the hype machine is in full power mode these days on AI. AI is a set of very, very fast, rich algorithms. That's what it is, that do search and retrieval and combinatory activities. It does not reason in the way that the human mind reasons. So it's not likely that it's going to take over the universe and reduce all of us to slaves. It can only respond to what is out there, and what is out there has a lot of garbage in it. And so it's the activity of refining the data sources for the most valuable. But again, it is working purely on a set of algorithms. It doesn't have the power to reason in the way that the human mind does. That doesn't mean it doesn't have value. It has a lot of value and will have value across many, many applications in business. But I think there's a lot of concern out there now that it's going to subjugate human beings, and it's not going to do that.
Great. I think that is all for today. Thank you all for joining this part 2. And please remember there is a part 3 coming soon. So look out for that invitation to the 3rd in this series. And thank you all for joining today. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.